This podcast is sponsored by nobody.
Hey dudes, this is Saratoga Valentine, MJ in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, and you're listening to Tommy Throwback Kovac on Splat from the Past. Tommy's a free spirit who wants to know about your career and your belly button. You've been warned. Later, Tiger.
Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things could get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a very funny and very talented lady from Canada, and I'm talking about Marla Lukofsky. She is so damn funny. You go on YouTube, watch her videos on her channel. She is just fucking hilarious. She has been around a long time, coming up in Canada and then moving to LA. She's best known for doing a lot of voiceover work. She did the voice of Good Luck Bear in the Care Bears cartoon series and all 3 Care Bears movies, including my personal favorite, the second one, Care Bears 2, A New Generation. She'll be my 3rd guest from that one, as a matter of fact. And she also did voices for Starcom, the Alf cartoon, the Super Mario Brothers show. And she's done on-camera stuff, including Jim Carrey's very first movie, which was for TV. It was called Rubber Face. She did a low-budget horror thriller called Honeymoon in 1985. It's very entertaining. Check it out on YouTube. And she's done lots of stuff. And she survived cancer twice, breast cancer. And we're going to get into all of that today, and I cannot wait. I love talking to amazing, inspiring people. So, here is my interview with Marla Lukofsky. Hey, Marla, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Everything sounds good.
Very good. I'm just going to put a do not disturb on this, so we'll be okay.
Are you in a hotel?
I'm very popular, so I get a lot of calls.
This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure.
So, going back in time, I know you began in music, but were you a funny kid growing up?
I was not a funny kid. I was a very quiet, reserved, and extremely shy child who was often referred to as the sad little girl with the big brown eyes. So, comedy didn't really come out of me, and being quiet at home and me being a homebody led to a lot of quiet days, months, and years. And it wasn't really until the music came into my life, and I was starting to talk in between songs while I was performing as a folk singer that I realized I had a good sense of humor. I mean, I internally talked to myself a lot and thought I was funny. But when you spend a lot of time with your family at home and they don't think you're funny, that's all you believe. Except that you thought, gee, that I was. I made myself laugh, you know?
Yeah. Were your family members funny?
No. You know what? My little sister, Elaine, she always made me laugh. So I thought she was funny, and she still makes me laugh to this day. And she kind of said, I think you're funny. I don't know why anyone else doesn't. But, like I said, you've got to get out of your little circle of life before you realize you can't use your family as the gauge.
Right.
That also goes for when your family thinks you're hysterical. Don't use that as the gauge either. Use strangers.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean. I relied on my family way too long and stuff, and I had a lot of hit and miss strangers telling me I was funny, others telling me I wasn't funny, so I totally get that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Were there any comedians that influenced you as a child?
Well, I wasn't really watching a lot of comedy, and comedy, believe it or not, even though it's been for the vast part of my life,
Yeah.
wasn't of interest to me, so I wasn't watching it. But I can tell you,
Mm-hmm.
because I did watch a lot of television, I remember watching Phyllis Diller on TV
Yep.
and thinking she was pretty wacky. And honestly, at that time, I didn't appreciate her as much as I did when our paths professionally crossed. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I wanted to answer your question, which was, I saw Phyllis Diller. I saw Toady Fields on, Ed Sullivan. I saw Mama's Mabley. I saw these people. I thought it was great to see women on stage, and whether I laughed or not, I thought it was great to see them. And then Carol Burnett with a sketch comedy, which isn't stand-up, but it was funny, and it was sketch, and she was funny,
Right.
with herself. So those are the people who I saw, but I wouldn't say they influenced me. And, of course, I cannot forget the wonderful and brilliant Joan Rivers,
Of course.
because she just always made me laugh. And when she died, I was beside myself. I was like, because I thought she was going to live forever, and she didn't die of anything due to age. I think she was in her late 70s or early 80s. She was, if you saw that documentary that was amazing, the name escapes me, but she was full force, didn't slow down, was still as funny as ever, and had an operation that was, sounds like a really good case of malpractice. Somebody did something wrong, and she's dead because of it, and that's tragedy.
Yeah. Oh, God. The thing I love about Joan Rivers is that, she was rejected by Hollywood, so she made a whole career out of making fun of Hollywood.
Right. And she survived. She just kept going. She also made a great career later on in life on the Shopping Network, didn't she?
Yep. And the Fashion Police and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. Right, the fashion shows and commentary, and then getting her daughter into it and everything. Like, really, she was extraordinary. And her products and her jewelry, and still just, playing every product she can get her hands on and killing it and flying all over the place. And if you see that documentary, you'll know if she opens the calendar, a hardcover calendar, and sees any gaps of white in those days, she's not happy. It all has to be filled in with words of where she's going, where she's booked, where she's traveling.
Exactly. How old were you when you started gravitating towards music?
I was 14, and I remember the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was sitting in the TV room with my parents. I saw these guys come on.
Right.
I was thrilled. I was so excited. I thought they were so hot. And my father was in the paper business, and he had Bristol board downstairs. I ran down to the basement with scissors, and I cut out guitars. Then I just started to play cardboard guitars, and I just thought one day I'm going to get a guitar. So when I was 14, I bought a $15 guitar that had the action on it that was so horrible, like half an inch off the board, that my fingers were bleeding. But I bought a book, and I just learned chords, and I just played and played and played in my bedroom by myself. And over time, started to write. All these songs started to come out of me, and they were very funny songs. And some were serious, but mostly were funny. I was also learning every folk singer in the business, Carole King, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, and that's how I put the act together. So I started at 14, and by the time I was 16, I thought, I'm ready, world. So I decided to open the phone book and call the most famous folk club in what I knew was the world, and that was the Riverboat, and that's where Joni Mitchell plays, and that's where Gordon Lightfoot plays. So I called them up. I didn't think, I should start small. I started at the top. So I called them up, and I said, my my name's Marla Lukofsky, and I'm a folk singer, and I'd really like to get booked there. And he interrupted me and said, how soon can you get down here? And I said, 20 minutes? And he said, okay, fine, because our opening act just canceled, and we need somebody now. And I raced down there in 15 minutes, and I got there, and the guy said, how do you say your name again? And I said, Marla Lukofsky, Marla Lukofsky.
Yeah.
Okay, wait in this green room. I go into the green room, and I see every folk singer's signatures on the wall. And I looked for Joni Mitchell's, and I saw it there, and I pulled out my pen, and I put my name right near hers, right near the god of music, and then my bowels kicked in, and I started to get diarrhea, because every time I had to do any kind of performance, I soon learned after that moment, I got diarrhea because I was so nervous. So I was on the toilet, and I suddenly heard, and now our next guest, our opening guest, is a young woman, and I went, oh my God, I think it's me. And I heard him say, Marla Lukowski, and I went, oh, damn, she didn't say my name right. I came out there hoping there's no toilet paper hanging on me, and I came out on stage, and I just started to talk to the audience, just to warm them up and warm myself up, and they started to laugh. That was before I sang anything. Oh my God, what is that? They're laughing. This is amazing. And then I sang my song, and each song is like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and they weren't laughing during the song. You know, they were smiling. They were moving to the music, but then I stopped playing the song because it was at the end of the song, and I started to talk again about what happened to me that week or whatever, and they started to laugh again. And it just went through that for the next 20 minutes. The rest of my set was like quiet for the singing and laughing for the banter in between the songs. And of course, what happened was when I was finished and the audience seemed to really like me,
Yeah.
I came off stage and the manager came up to me and he said, you're not a folk singer, you're a comic. And I thought, this is a scene from Funny Girl. You're not a skater, you're a comic. I went, okay, great. Yeah, it is great. It's comedy night at all these folk clubs.
Yeah.
But use the guitar still, because it's not real stand-up. You know, it's just folk clubs, and they have a comedy folk night. So
Right.
I started to play all those places because of that man. And then suddenly folk died, and I took it personally. I thought it was something I had done. But it was just a change of time and history and era. And I just kept doing my thing at any club that would have me. And then actually this great club that started up. And that was soon after. So that was 1973 that I started.
Mm-hmm.
It was 1975, this club started called Friar's Tavern. And it was at a major intersection in downtown Toronto called Yonge and Dundas. And it was like a real old nightclub. And it was dark. And they had this great guy who had his own TV show on a cable TV show. And it was an up-and-coming TV station that's now huge.
Uh-huh.
But at the time it was smaller. And his name was Gene Taylor. And he hosted. He was American, so you could really tell. There's a difference between Canadian house and American house. And he was the real deal.
Yeah.
And they're more seasoned. You just are born in the United States and you're more seasoned. So he was doing his thing, and I got on the roster. There was an open mic night. I got on. He says, okay, you can become a regular. You're really funny with your guitar, and you're funny, you know, when you don't play. So that was it. And some of the other people who came on during that time was Rick Moranis
Ooh.
and Martin Short. Yeah,
Wow.
Rick and I used to have a couple of drinks every now and then in the boiler room before our names were called. And a guy named Larry Horowitz, who was incredibly funny. And that was just a real wonderful time, actually, in my career. That was like the beginning. And then that place closed. And then we had the next thing was that I got called from a club called Yuck Yuck. Hey, we've heard about you.
Oh, yes.
You know, you're playing around town. We'd like you to come in and do a guest spot. And I did. So I knew what to do. I did my guitar stuff, which got laughs and stuff, and I did my banter, which I had honed down to a good killer 5-10 minutes. And then I closed off with what became my signature piece, which was The Wizard of Oz in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, I got an encore and a standing ovation, And he said, can you come back all week? You're on. You're a regular. And that was it. I never stopped working.
Wow. Okay, before we get into the comedy, I just wanted to mention when I was reading your riverboat story, I was on the floor laughing when I read that you got to know the toilet very well there.
Yeah, I really did. I mean, first thing I do when I go to any of these clubs, at least at the time, was, where are your toilets?
Yeah.
And I got to know them very well. And, I mean, recently, just before COVID, you know, when I started to do jazz singing, it's the same deal. And unfortunately, sometimes the toilets are flooded and there's only one and it's broken, and I'm lined up with some of the people in the audience, and I've got loose bowels, and I need that toilet. Please, you know, let me butt in here.
Yeah.
Toilets and me, that's my middle name.
That's awesome. I love it.
Marla Lukofsky, yeah.
So were you pretty nervous that first time you did stand-up?
I was, and you know what, I still do. Well, when I leave a gap of time, which is what I do now, I leave gaps of time, but at the time I was playing every night. But I did get very nervous. But the strange thing is that I get calm as soon as I take the stage.
Mm.
And that's when I realized that's really interesting. I think I feel more comfortable in front of a room of strangers than I do a room of people I know. And it calms me because I feel somehow like I'm home. And that's really strange. I mean, I was young, and I was doing stand-up after all those years of music. I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a strange thing to feel like you're home.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, I wasn't nervous the first time I went up. I was 23. I was cocky and confident. And there was two black women in the room. That was my audience that night. It was like late at night, too.
Yeah.
In the middle of a laundromat that had an open mic.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
It really is a great idea. And what happened?
They laughed at the jokes I stole from the comedian that I was stealing from, and then when I went on my tangent, they got turned off and they left, and then the show was over.
Oh dear! But did you get the clothes in the rinse cycle, or were they in the dryer by then?
I didn't have to put any clothes in the laundromat. I never did at that place. Because it was like, because it was out of town. I had to take the train to go to that laundromat for that open mic all the time. So.
Oh, brother! Wow.
Yeah.
that actually would make a really good sitcom premise. You should write that down.
Maybe. So.
Okay.
So who was part of that comedy scene in Canada in the 70s?
Well, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really an electric, exciting time in Toronto, and Toronto represents Canada. At that time, Rick Moranis was doing stuff, Martin Short was doing stuff, Andrew Martin was doing stuff, Catherine O'Hara was doing stuff, Green and Shadow that became the Frantics. We all knew each other, and we were all playing different clubs at the same time. So that was the late 70s and the 80s. And because I was becoming quite popular, making a name for myself, to the point where one night I came off stage, and Martin Short came up to me with the owner of Second City,
Right.
Andrew Alexander.
Uh-huh.
And he came up to me, and Andrew said, I'm really impressed with you. And he hired Andrew Martin and Catherine O'Hara.
Right.
And he said, initially he said, I'd love to be in Second City, and if you don't want to do that, I'd love to give you a room in our nightclub. It's going to be the Marla Lukofsky room, and you're going to play there 5 or 6 nights a week, and you're going to have different material every week, and it's going to be yours, because you're brilliant, I love you. And I thought, this is like a dream come true, except for one thing, I can't write that much. It's hard for me to come up with new material.
Right.
I didn't want to stay in one nightclub every night. I not that I love the traveling, but I like the diversity and the opportunities to be in different places at different times. And to be stuck in one place, even if it was Second City in Toronto, I didn't want it. So I said no. So then he offered me Second City touring group.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with that, and I learned the sketches, and I could see on the sketches that in brackets it was Andrea Martin's role, because I looked like Andrea Martin. So he wanted me, not only because I was funny, but I looked just like Andrea, so he wanted to market that and use that. And it didn't work out. I was on the road in Ontario in places with a group of people who'd been working together for years, and they quite resented me. I hadn't taken all the classes. I hadn't been doing improv group work for years like they did, and they said, "You think you're just a comic? You have no training in this comedic acting. How dare you be on stage with us?" It was very difficult. And then the time came. I lasted 3 months until they realized I wasn't Andrea Martin and asked me to leave. I came up to them and said, "This isn't working out for me," and they said, "Yeah, we think the same. Bye-bye."
Oh.
Right. And then I just went back to my stand-up, and I was happy with that.
Shit. I know a couple Second City people that I've interviewed, David Hubbard and Ron James.
Yeah. And Ron, I remember him when he was with them, and
Mm-hmm.
I find him more approachable now, even though he's doing his one-man shows all over the place. It's like there's something about Sex and City that goes into people's heads that makes them, I don't know, a little snobbish or something. But Ron became a much more warmer, approachable person for me.
Really?
Later on, when he started to do his own stuff, yeah. I mean, he wasn't ever mean or rude or anything, but there's something about the clique. It's a clique,
Right.
So there's something about that, and now he's on stage on his own and doing great work.
He's also extremely bitter about the United States. He hates America. He, got rejected in Hollywood after he left Second City. He was there for like 10 years. He came back to Canada. He started doing stand-up, and, his stand-up hasn't been accepted in America either. He's just really mad about it, but he's also grateful at the same time.
Well, that's interesting, because I haven't had that talk with him, but I've heard that from other comics I won't mention.
Yeah.
Who went to the States and it didn't work out, so they've become totally hateful and bitter towards the United States just because they didn't love them the way Canada loves them. And
yeah.
That's showbiz, baby. That's roll the dice. That's the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
The country is still great. I love the United States. Every country has their flaws, and I still think North America is still a great place to live, regardless of that. And I love the United States because really the sky's the limit, don't you think?
Exactly. I think so too. Yeah. Anything goes.
Yeah, anything goes, and you can really create something out of nothing and actually become a huge success with luck and a lot of hard work. I really believe that. And with Canada, whenever I meet somebody famous,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean famous, I meant talented.
Right.
I tell them, move to the States, because nothing's going to happen for you here. There's a ceiling. They'll only give you so much work. It won't last that long, and if it lasts that long, by the end of your career, you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage. So move if you really want to do something, but it's going to be hard because you're going to be the little fish in the big pond. So
exactly.
That's the way it is, but it's worth it.
Yeah. So, as far as stand-up, did you see guys like Wayne Fleming and Mike McDonald and Rick Dukeman there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes. And, in fact, I recently posted an ad. I like to post this collection of some of my articles, and Wayne was opening for me, and then there was Larry Horowitz, but I was the feature act. Yeah. Yes. And Mike and I have a very long history. In fact, when he first had his first gig, it was, I think, the opening of the Yuck Yucks Ottawa Club. And the review came out. I love it. It was like the brightest spot on the much too long lineup. Was the first one to take the stage, Marla Lukofsky. Mike McDonald was third or fifth. I got a better review than Mike McDonald. Oh, did he hate me after that?
Oh.
But the thing was, because it was so misogynistic, they made sure that I had to be, nobody wants to be the opening act, you know that. Nobody wants to be first in a long lineup. You know, because it's a specialty show. So we've got 10 comics. Who's going to go first? Because you're the one who has to warm up the things. Nobody's warmed up yet. So they picked me. You know, I'm the only comic. I'm the only female comic. Maker, you know what you going to do? Not do it? So of course I did it. And they all hated me when I got the best review.
Oh, boy.
So that was the beginning of Mike McDonald's and I. And years went on. And one point, I remember coming into the club, and we always stand at the back when the guys are on. And I saw Mike McDonald doing my act. And he was doing my impressions, particularly the fly hitting the windshield. And it was such a quirky impression because I did impressions in my act as well. And it was very quirky. And I went backstage and waited behind the curtain. He came off stage, and, you know, he's like 6-something, and I'm 5. I'm talking feet. Not age. And he comes off, and I said, I watched what you did. You did my act. And he said, well, I do it better than you. I said, no, you don't. And I thought, I have nothing to lose here. I grabbed him by the neck as far as I could reach. And I said, don't you dare do that again. It's my stuff. It's not for you. I don't care who does it better, and you know I kill with it. It's mine. Don't do it. I know you can kill me. I know you're stronger than me. I know you have big, thick, fists, and you're doing your act, how you can shoot people, but don't do it.
Yeah.
He didn't do it from that moment on. Now, we were never friends from that moment on either, nor before. And we've had other gigs where we had to share the bill, and it was never easy. But later on in life, when Mike got sick, it really changed him. And it made him a little more thoughtful and reflective and humble. And he came into town, and he put out a Facebook post saying, you know, if anybody wants to meet me for lunch. So I wrote him, and we met for lunch. And it was the first time we had a normal conversation. And it was revealing and vulnerable and extraordinary all at the same time. And he actually apologized to me for treating me so badly all those years. And I really appreciated that. And then I think a year later, something happened in the press, and I wasn't acknowledged, and I should have been, and it was about stand-up comedy and women, and I wasn't even acknowledged, and I was really hurt. And I called him, and I told him about it, and he said, leave it with me. I'll take care of this. And somehow he rectified the situation, and my name got back in, whether it be a newspaper or a podcast or something. I can't remember what it was, but he rectified it, and I thought, now this is a Mike I didn't know before, and probably wasn't that way before, but he did become that way, and that's how we ended our relationship, on good terms, on caring terms, and being a loyal and protective friend. And that was the way we ended things before he died.
Yeah, I hear stories about that all the time. I was friends with so-and-so, and then they stole my jokes. It's very common, you know?
Yeah.
It's sad. But you mentioned you worked with Howie, and you worked with Jim Carrey, too?
Yeah, you know, when Howie was, he was starting when I was starting, and he was so different that people were going crazy. So this talent agent came into the club, and I was different and unique too, and he approached Howie and me to represent us.
Yeah.
And we were the two clients, and he was getting 15%, which was huge then, because everyone was getting 10. And we started to get all sorts of special gigs and stuff. And then one day I got selected, not through this guy, but through something else. I don't know how I did it. This huge show at Hamilton Place, which is a huge, huge theater hall.
Right.
And I got on the show, and I told agent manager who was representing me at the time, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to try and get Howie on that too. That's huge," because Jack Jones was emceeing, it was a full orchestra, and Phyllis Diller was on the show, and the Letterman was on the show, and Barbie Benton was on the show. Everybody in Hollywood was on the show, and they did episodes. And he got Howie on because I tipped him off to the show because I had to give him 15% of this gig that I got. And Howie and I started to become more friendly. I even was invited to his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And then he moved. And then I went to, I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but I went to L.A. To tape Evening at the Improv.
Yes, which I'm going to ask you about, by the way.
That's a story in itself.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that I saw I saw Howie and his wife, and we hung out a little bit, and he said, "I've got to do a quick set at the Improv. Come with me." So I came, and he did a set, and the crowd was going crazy over him. So he was already that famous.
Yeah.
So he wasn't on TV a lot, but the live crowds were going crazy for him. And then we went back to his apartment with him and his wife, and we hung out a little bit. And he said, "You've got to move here. You've got to move here. Nothing's going to happen for you there." And I said, "I can't. I'll never leave Canada. I'll never leave Toronto. My family's there." And it's not like it's not like my family was my favorite group of people, and they were always saying, "You're not funny, be quiet,"
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine myself being alone in Los Angeles and knocking on doors. And I just said, I can't. He said, "You must," and I didn't. Cut to Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
On the scene, who's this kid doing these impressions. I'm standing at the back, and I'm going, "Oh my God, this is such a talent. He's going to die here."
Yeah.
So we start to get booked. We share a lot of gigs together. A lot of the comics are not very nice.
Of course.
And I just said to the booking agent, I said, "Just pair me up with Jim. He's the only not nice one. He's a gentleman. I like working with him." And so we did a lot of gigs together, and we even did a place where there's this big prison in Kingston, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And we played there and opened, I think we opened for a metal rock group called Godot.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. Something went wrong with the sound system, and I can't remember if we had done something before or after or in between, but the sound system blew. The crowd went crazy. We were rushed into the trailer of Godot, me, Jim, and the Godot band members, and they were starting to shoot elastics at each other, and Jim and I going, "That's mature." Okay. And the crowd comes out and starts to rock the trailer, and we're going back and forth, shaking, and going, "I can't believe this is happening." And that story cut to 1998, when I was in L.A., living there, and taking a part-time job as a waitress, catering for big parties. One of the parties was Jim Carrey's opening of one of his movies.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't allowed to speak to any celebrities there, but I spoke to the supervisor, and I said, "I know Jim Carrey. I'm friends with him. I haven't spoken to him in several years since he moved to L.A., but he would be happy to see me." She said, "I can't let you speak." I said, No, I can't." I said, "Please look into my eyes. I'm telling you, he will be happy to see me." She goes, "Well, all right." So she led me into the VIP area. I got the waitress, uniform, the black pants, the white shirt, the bow tie. And he's being interviewed, surrounded by reporters. And he looks up and he sees me and he says, "Oh my God, Marla." And he pushes them aside and he runs up to me and he picks me up in the air and swings me around, and we just stand there and look in each other's eyes. And I reminded him of Godot that night. He said, "Oh my God, yes." And I said, I told him about my favorite impression of his, and that I missed that he doesn't do those things anymore. But I followed his career, and I'm very proud of you, and not that you need my pride, and sorry about the loss of your father. And we had this great little exchange, and then they said, Jim, you have to come back." Now, Okay, Jim. It was like a movie from Hollywood in itself. Bye, Marla. Bye, Jim. And then he went off, and then I came home and found a lump in my breast. So we'll go back to what's your next question.
That's awesome. So what year did you move to L.A.?
What year? I did 1990.
Oh, so you...
August 1990.
So you moved much later. Okay. So before then, though, when you...
I was 34.
Okay. So before that, though, like when you were just coming out to L.A. every now and then, did you ever go to the Comedy Store?
I didn't. I did go to the Comedy Store, and I waited to get on, and I was put on by Misty Shore at 2 in the morning or something like that, or 1 in the morning, and it was like your scene. There were 2 people in the audience, and I did my set, and I never heard anything. I went back to the hotel. I never heard anything, and I thought, okay, that's the way it works. And, I spoke to some guys and said, oh, yeah. At the beginning, they're not going to give you a good spot. They're going to give you the worst spot. So, I said, okay. So that was my only experience of that.
Mm-hmm.
But before I moved there, because the TV show Evening at the Improv was created, they wanted some Canadian comics. So they came down and scouted in Toronto for some talent, and I was one of them that got picked, and that's what brought me to fly into LA well before I moved there. And I did the taping of Evening at the Improv with Ellie Gould as my host, and him in the dressing room with me, getting our makeup put on at the same time. And of course, all I'm thinking of is, I want to talk about Barbara, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. Not really that interested in you, but I want to talk about your ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say that. I just thought that.
Yeah.
But then I thought, he's a nice Jewish guy. He'll be able to say my last name right, won't he? And he said, is there anything you want to ask me? And I said, yeah, can you say my last name right? He said, Lukofsky, right? I said, yeah. Hey, you're great. He said, oh, no problem. Anything else? I said, no, you're nice. And when you see the tape, and I don't know if it's on anything, because I remember that the Evening at the Improv, whoever owns it now, contacted me that it had to be removed from YouTube because I didn't get their permission. And I'm thinking, what's the skin off their nose that Marla Lukofsky from Canada did Evening at the Improv? Like, what do they care?
Yeah.
But he said my name right, and I had a great set, and went back to the hotel and hung out a little bit on my days off there before we had to fly back to Toronto. And I started to really like LA, but I kept thinking, I don't know, move here. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And it's really amazing. But, my life got to a point where I've reached the pinnacle that I can in Canada. Nothing more can happen to me. I've done everything. And the curve was starting to go downward. There was a new breed of comics. There was a new bunch of shows. The Kids in the Hall were being hot and everything now. And I just thought, I've got to move, or I'm going to be too old, too scared, and do something. So I moved, and it was very difficult and daring, and I was alone in L.A., and started to make connections, started to get representation, started to play clubs.
Do you remember who else was on the bill with you that night, Evening at the Improv?
No.
No?
You know what? I was really nervous because because it was a taping of a TV show that was,
right,
I think, pretty international. That was going everywhere. I just saw the cameras. There was 3 cameras floating around. The place was, of course, sold out because it was a TV taping. So, of course, it sold out. They didn't give me much warning. And if you actually see, you'll see actually in my demo tape of there's these snippets of me coming out of all sorts of TV shows. And I'm walking, like I'm marching down through the audience to get on stage. And I was mumbling to myself and seeing my lips are moving. And I'm saying, I can't believe they called me. They didn't give me a 5-minute warning. I was blowing my nose, and then I heard Marla Lukofsky on this national TV show, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe this. I hope I remember my answer, you know, and like, oh my God. And then I took the stage, and I actually did go blank at one point. I actually went blank at one point, and I just started to clear my throat a lot. And it's terrifying when you only get one shot at this, and it's a huge American TV show. You don't want to screw up.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have stories about Warner Klemper and Alan Arkin.
Yes, because when I moved to LA in 1990, I was on a work permit because I applied to. I used an American lawyer. I needed to get some work status, so she said, "Send me every piece of newspaper clipping that has your name on it." And as it happens, I've made such an imprint in the entertainment business here in Canada. And I had a lot of press, a lot of articles, like a lot. Entertainment gossip columnists used to follow me, you know. Where's Marla Lukofsky doing? Oh, she's filming in Montreal. She's filming in Paris. She's doing this. She's doing that. But lots of big articles on me. I just mailed everything to this lawyer in New York, and she said, "You totally would qualify for alien of extraordinary ability. I'm going to book you an appointment." And I had to go to Montreal to be interviewed by the American Embassy, and they had the whole package of all the clippings I sent her in their hands when they interviewed me, and I sat there for hours. I think they forgot my name, number.
Yeah.
I sat there, and they never called my number, and I went up to the wicket, and I said, "You never called my number." "Oh, okay, we can interview you now." It was such a weird thing. I thought, this can't get screwed up. It just can't. I've waited all my life for this. And they interviewed me, and they said, "Is this you? Is this 40 articles of you? I said, "Yeah." He just stamped it. He said, "You are an alien of extraordinary ability." I said, "Thank you." That's the biggest compliment that I could ever say is, "You're an alien." "Okay, thank you." And that made me get a green card. Or did it get me, let's see, that gave me the green card. That got me the green card, I think, but I'm getting mixed up now. But I got the work permit, and then you could only do showbiz with the work permit, which is very limiting. Because if I didn't get a TV show or a TV commercial or a voiceover thing, I'd have to work under the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I did part-time office work. But then when I got my green card, which was that story I just told you, I could work anywhere. So I always wanted to be a waitress, and I was never a waitress before.
Right.
So I always admired waitresses. So the first place I wanted to waitress was my favorite diner, and that was Kokomo's Diner.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my job there, and that's where I started to serve people like, and I want to tell you the story about Alan Fish.
Yeah.
I'm playing at him. But I was having all sorts of people to serve. And I served Werner Klemper, who was Colonel Klink.
Schultz. Yeah.
Oh, he was so not nice. He was so rude.
I heard.
Not nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, he really isn't. But Alan Arkin, who I also served, was very nice. And I really liked him. And I served also Molly Ringwald, too, who paid her bill in nickels. And I thought that was really strange. Really strange.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That is so funny.
She was nice. Yeah.
Oh, that's
But,
good.
you know, did you read about the story of me and Keanu Reeves?
Oh, on Young Again? I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll leave you to it then.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, before I wanted to ask you, you mentioned too, you used to be friends with another guest of mine, Tanya Williams.
I love Tanya Williams.
Yeah.
She and I were actually best friends at one time. We were very, very close. And it was years. Now, where did we meet? I think we met. It was some showbiz thing, and we lined up at the buffet. And I said something, and she thought it was funny, and she said something, and I thought it was funny. And she's so engaging and friendly and warm, and we just
Yes, she
got
is.
beside each other and started to talk. And she's just so right down to earth and warm, and And she lived downtown. I lived in Midtown, and we just started to hang out. And then she started to see my shows, and I started to see her stuff. And she even did some modeling a walkway. So at the time when she was on these successful kids shows at the time too,
Right.
people were recognizing her all over the place. It was crazy and exciting. And then I was getting recognized, and it was like we were we were a pair, and it was so much fun. I miss her terribly. We drifted apart. While we were really close in Toronto, and then she moved to LA, and I'll never forget. We stayed in touch when she moved, and she called me and said, "Mark, you're never going to believe where I got a job." I said, "I don't know, a big movie." She goes, "Nope, The Young and the Restless." And I went, "Oh my God, I love that show." I know, that's why I'm telling you. So when you come to visit, I'm going to bring you on the set.
Right.
So when I came, she brought me on the set, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching her put her makeup on, and I'm watching everything behind the scenes, and then I watched the whole taping of one of the shows, and her in it, and from that moment on, I could never watch The Young and the Restless anymore, because it became so real as to it being a set and a fake drop.
Yeah.
Not real this and that I wasn't caught up in the characters anymore. It was driving me nuts. So I kind of regret that I went, but it was also very exciting at the same time. But getting back to Tanya Williams, I've seen her once a couple of years ago at a party, and we had a lovely time and a lovely talk. And I miss our closeness, but I don't know what happened, but it happened. But I hope we ever see each other again. We'll hug and kiss and have a nice talk again. And I think she's doing great. You know, she's running a great film festival every year.
Yep.
I don't know what's happening now with the COVID, but I see her name pop up now and then. But I just love her. I think she's a great person.
Yeah, she's a people pleaser for sure. And I asked her back on maybe a year later. I never heard back from her, but that's okay because I'm booked all the way till next year now. So I'm not hurting for guests anymore.
Right.
So let's get into your on-camera credits first. Going back to Jim Carrey, you were in his first movie, Rubber Face.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
I saw this for the first time when I was 12 years old because right when he hit and got famous, they released it on VHS.
And did they release it under the other name, the Rubber Face? It
was Rubber Face, yes. And I saw it on every video store shelf for years until video stores closed.
Right. And so I did it when it was known as Introducing Janet. And him and I were, at the time, the two top comics. Mm-hmm. And so the scouts came down, and they, saw everybody on the lineup, and they picked me and him. And we were the most animated and the most, we did the impressions. I did the Wizard of Oz. He did all those amazing impressions. So we were both in it. He had more of a principal part than I did. Mm-hmm. But we were both in it, yeah. And that was, I think, the beginning for him. And I just remember he was doing another set. Mm-hmm. He was having a lot of representation and getting a lot of stuff. But I came up to him backstage and I said, "Jim, you've got to get out of here. You've got to move to LA. Nothing, it feels good right now. You're getting a lot of attention, but there's nowhere to go from here. You've got to move. Just mark my words. If we never speak to each other again, and go." And he did go. And, at the beginning it was hard for him. Mm-hmm. He had to go on at the 2 in the morning and the 1 in the morning like me. But then he worked his way to a good spot in the clubs and stuff. And then he did some projects that flopped. And then it was hard to get a second and third chance, but he did. And, the rest is history.
Yeah, wow. That's so amazing. Yeah, I've seen it many times since. It's been on YouTube and stuff. I actually interviewed another person from it, Helene Udy, Canadian actress. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And then you were in a horror thriller movie called Honeymoon.
And you know, Honeymoon really isn't a horror thriller.
It's not
when
technically a horror film, but it's got a horrific element to it.
Yes, it has. It has definitely the thriller suspense. But when I saw the posters, and there were two different posters,
Yeah.
I have one of them actually in my living room frame. It was like the skull, you know, the skull and the scary and the blood and stuff. And I went, what's this? It's not a horror movie. And the marketing person said, well, we're going to market it as that. It'll get people in to see it, whether they like it or not. I said, but they're going to be disappointed because it's not a horror movie. But this is what we do. This is our business. So we had a regular poster with, you know, two guys and a woman on the cover, and then they had the horror thing with the skull.
Yeah.
Anyways, but it was huge and wonderful. I was doing really well in my career, and I was with the top agency here, and I got a call that you're up for a movie, and they want to come and meet you. They're flying in from Montreal, and I think even Paris. Yeah. And they flew in, and I came to meet them and spoke to them. They saw my demo tape, and they just said, you're Sally. We want you. And it was, wow, that was amazing. 2 weeks' work. We're going to do all your scenes with Natalie Baye and John Shea. We're going to shoot in Montreal and New York, and we're going to do post-production in Paris. Do you have a passport and driver? I said, yes, yes, and yes. So, and they paid me a nice chunk of money, and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I did it, and we did all the scenes everywhere in all those 3 different places, and post-production in Paris. I know it sounds wonderful, but I didn't speak French, and I was very lonely, sitting in my hotel room for 2 weeks, and having jet lag and having to re-loop a lot of my scenes, because there's always problems with the sound. And but I got to see where Natalie Baye lives in the countryside of France, and I got to meet her husband at the time, who was Johnny Hallyday, who was like Elvis Presley in France.
Uh-huh.
And when I walked by with her in the patio, she shouted out into this little glass room, Johnny, come say hello to Marla. So he came out and he just shoved a CD, signed it, said, here. And then he went away. And that was his way of saying hello. And I still have that CD with his signature on it. And actually, I think it was an audio tape. I don't think there were two CDs, but I don't know. But I still have it. And I hung out with Natalie Baye. That was nice. Okay, sure. But John Shea was so nice. And you'll see him. I can't remember all his credits, but you know, because you know who he is.
Yeah.
And he's done all sorts of things. Not lately, I haven't seen him. But he was such a nice guy. And he actually, they used to go out for dinner in between, you know, the end of shooting days. And he would ask me, and I'd always say, no, thank you, no, thank you. And then he called me up one night, and he said, are you shy? I said, I am. He said, good. That's all I needed to know, because I wasn't sure how to reach you. I wasn't sure if you were annoyed or stand up. He said, will you come out for dinner with me right now? I said, yes. And so he was so nice. And when we went to New York to film, he introduced me to his wife, because he lived in New York at the time. And he was just so nice and caring and just a down-to-earth great guy. Then he was so talented and generous as an actor. That's where I learned the meaning of when someone is generous as an actor. He gave as much as I gave back in our scenes, and there was very few. And but he would compliment and like this, or I like how you held my hand with that, and I like you did this and this. It was really gracious. And actually, listen to this. When I first got the part, I was told I was going to work with John Shea. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe it, because I was a fan of his. And I got a call one day while I'm sitting in my apartment, and I said, hello, Marla. Hello. This is John Shea. I said, uh-huh, right. Hey, you're doing a great impression, Bruce. No, Marla, I don't know who Bruce is. I'm John Shea. Uh-huh, okay, you can keep denying it. And I just gave him a hard time. And then I just hung up. And then I called Bruce, and I said, that was really good. He said, good what? Good impression, like you were trying, and like, you know, it didn't work. I don't know what you're talking about, really. I said, you weren't trying to pretend to be John Shea and call me and welcome me to the movie? No. I said, oh my God. And I think he called back John Shea or something, and I explained myself, or maybe I know it, I think it was. I know it was. I waited till we met in person in Montreal on the movie set, and I explained everything. I've got to apologize to you. He said, I didn't know what was going on. He was so like, me, rude. You know, I was trying to be warm to you, and he kept calling me rude. So anyway, it ended up being a really nice relationship at the time.
Nice, nice. Was the sex good?
I never sleep with somebody who's with somebody else.
I know, I'm just kidding.
And he was married. I know you are. I'm not. You have a dance.
Okay, tell me the Young Again story with Keanu.
So I was working on a show on CBC called Midday. It was a news show. So here I am being a comic, and I started to do, somebody's seeing me do The Wizard of Oz in 3 minutes, and it was a CBC radio producer, and she had asked me, can you do another version of another movie in 3 minutes? Because I would like to hire you to be a regular on my radio show called Basic Black, starring Arthur Black, and I produce it. I said, sure, just give me the name of the movie, I'll study the movie, and I'll do all the voices and sound effects in 3 minutes. So that's what I did. And I was doing that for like a year, and then, you know, CBC is like the big national network, but it's a small little town at the same time. I got a call from the executive producer. His name was Michael Harris. He called me and said, hello, Marla, this is Michael Harris. You don't know me, but I'm the executive producer of an up-and-coming news show called Midday. And how would you like to become a household name? And I said, like Canadian Tire and Tim Hortons? He said, yeah, like that. And I said, oh, okay, what do I have to do for it? He said, you just have to be funny and do last word columns, 3-minute last words, talk to camera or be on location and do something funny in 3 minutes. We'll put you on every day, we'll pre-tape them, and we'll do some live, and you just have to keep coming up with stuff. I said, okay, I'll call you in a week. And then I called him and I said, I don't know how to write that much material. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And it ended up that they started to come up with things, and I started to fix the scripts. And then, like 50 episodes in, I said, just let me write the script. And I'll write the on camera just when I'm sitting, with the host of the show. And they go, and now Marla Lukofsky talked about shoulder pads, and the camera's turned to me, and I talk about shoulder pads for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm funny. That I would write all that stuff, because only I could write it. But the on-location stuff was more like, how to do this, how to do that, how to repot your plants, how to put new wax on your skis. And actually somebody at BBC said, you're wasting this girl's talent. This girl's talented. Why are you having her do these household hints? Like, let her do her thing. So they started asking, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do a piece on being short. And that's one of my favorite pieces, is being short. So we filmed this thing with all these little segments of what's it like being short, and it became so funny. And so I started to do a lot of things like that, and I did 100 segments for them, the CBC News. So one of them, at the time, I was doing the Care Bears voices. I was doing a TV show and the movie Care Bears.
Right.
And I was doing Midday, and I was doing stand-up. And then I got a call. I'd done the movie Honeymoon, in France and Paris, New York. And I got a call that I've got a part in a movie called Young Again for Disney. And it stars Robert York and Lindsay Wagner. And I said, great. Yeah, you're going to be the secretary. Of course, I'm always the secretary of the best friend. Okay, fine. So I meet everybody, and I read the script, and it's about a younger guy, or the older guy who's Robert Urich, not old, but something about there's a younger version of himself.
Right.
Time lapse or something. I can't remember, and I didn't read the entire thing, to be honest. I usually just read my part. But the younger person who was supposed to be, I think, Robert Urich, was Keanu Reeves. But nobody knew who he was. It was his first thing, really. I mean, he did some little bits and some Canadian things that nobody knew about except some people in Canada. So I met him, and I thought, here's a wonderful opportunity for this new news show that I was a part of to interview a Canadian before they become famous and make them more well-known. Get the first interview. Expose the talent that you have. But they said, no. We're just going to interview Lindsay Wagner and Robert Urich. I said, okay, but I think you're making a mistake. Well, we're not asking your opinion anyways. I said, yeah, but I really want to push for this because you're making a mistake. You shouldn't wait for the United States to stamp approval on anything that's Canadian before you appreciate Canadians. And he said, no. He said, okay.
Yeah.
What if I interview him? What if I interview him? And then someone said, hey, would you be interviewing Robert Urich and Lindsay Wagner too? I said, sure. I'm very comfortable with that. Okay, because we don't have to use the tape of this guy that nobody knows. And
yeah.
Fine. So I interviewed all three, and that unknown person was Keanu Reeves.
Wow.
And oddly, I sent you a clip of it. I stumbled upon it because I was telling a friend, I said, do you know I interviewed him before he was famous, and he was so young. I was young too, but I was like 29, but he was really young. And then I punched it in on Google, and it came up. It was on some Russian station or something, and it came up. So I tried to grab it, you know,
yeah,
the file, and posted it on my own Facebook, and it's there, and it's amazing, and he owes me a thank you. But, I mean, I don't think he wouldn't have gone on to do bigger and greater things without my interview, because I don't even know if they aired that interview. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was kind, he was sweet, and as you know, he's such a down-to-earth, regular guy who's kind, who cares, who does his best. He's just a mensch. He's just a good person.
Yeah, I talked to his childhood friend Michael Dolan, who was also in the movie. He got in there because of Keanu.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's cool, though, that you got to kind of discover him there.
Yeah.
Then you did an episode of the 80s Twilight Zone reboot.
Yeah, and I was excited to do that because I was such a huge fan of the Twilight Zone. And so here's the reboot, right? And the part was a serious, dramatic part. And I liked that, too, because I wanted to venture out into not being the character, funny next-door neighbor or a funny secretary or funny anything. I just wanted something dramatic. And so this was this social worker thing, and I got to play against Charles Hayes from Hill Street Blues. And
From
it's a scene. Was he from Hill Street Blues?
Hill Street Blues, yeah.
Yep. We did the scene. We did a rehearsal with the director, who I can't remember who the director was, but we did the run-through. We did it again, the run-through, and the director said, I don't like the way you're reading. It's just the worst thing you could say to somebody when the cameras are about to roll with the take. And I want you to be like this, this, and this. I said, but the words don't match what you're asking me to be. And it doesn't make sense. And he said, well, that's what I want. So he walks away. Charles Hayes, who became a director and kept directing up until 2013.
Yeah.
He leans over to me and said, don't listen to a word that guy said. He's wrong. You did a great job. Do exactly what you did with me in the rehearsal. He said, okay, but I'll never get hired again. He said, trust me. Do what I said. So I did it. The way Charles Hayes said. And I never worked again. No, so I did it. And he said, good job. And I don't know what the director said. He just, never came back to me. And that was my big scene for it. But I was glad to be a part of Twilight Zone remake.
Yeah, and the little girl, Lisa Jacob, I follow her on Instagram. She's like a mental and physical health guru now or something. She doesn't act anymore, but everybody remembers her from Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember her too now that you're mentioning her, but yeah, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. So how did the voiceover work come about for you?
I remember approaching my agent, and I said, I want to do voice work. And she says, well, you and everybody else. And it's a really tight-knit group, and you can't get in. It's going to be very difficult. You have no experience. And I said, well, there's no harm in trying.
Yeah.
I'll put together, like, you're a top agent. You've got to, like, stand behind me and promote me and push. So I'll put together a demo tape, and please just send it out. So I went to the studio. I wrote spots. Because I'd been interviewed so much by radio personalities, I had one of them produce this demo tape. So we did mock commercials, or mock voice commercials, and mock this and mock that. I made dubs. I sent it to her. She sent them out. One day, I don't know what I was doing, but I got a phone call, and my agent called me and said, you're the Beaver. I said, excuse me? I shaved, She said, no, you're the Beaver. You are Bingo Beaver in the Get Along Gang. I sent your tape out, and they booked you. I said, oh, my God, that's amazing. So that was my first animation voice. And then I think the next major one was Good Luck Bear and Playful Heart Monkey for the Care Bears TV show and a couple of movies.
Yeah.
That character. Yeah. So that was the beginning. And then, it just led to one thing after another after another. I mean, that led to tons of radio spots. So much so that people would just say at auditions, oh, you're going to get it, because you're on the air all the time. And it became very competitive, resentful.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up loving the Care Bears, and the second one, Care Bears 2, A New Generation's my favorite of all of them. I just love that whole Camp Champ thing going on in there. That's why I've talked to Pam, and I've talked to Allison Court, and it's such a beautiful movie. HBO used to play it more than the other two, a lot more, and I just think it's a wonderful family cartoon movie.
And did you follow the TV series as well?
I did. Yeah, I didn't watch it as often though, as watching the movies though. But yeah, I did watch the TV show too. It was on a Saturday morning channel.
Yep, Saturday morning. It was. So yeah, it went on, and it still is my claim to fame. I mean, people may not remember this, that, and the other, but all I have to do is say, the shorter I get, the older I get. I don't get good service anymore, and I just say, I'm a Care Bear, I'm Good Luck Bear. You are? Well, what was your dish that you wanted? I'll bring you 2 or 3. Would you like to vary with that? Like, I immediately get treated better when I tell people I'm Good Luck Bear in the Care Bear cartoon.
Oh, that's so cute.
It's really great. So I'm using it now. I've become smart, so I'm using it.
Yeah, you must be amazed at the legacy of it. It's forever there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I had no idea, and yeah, it's just like how you see other actors say, "I had no idea this would become a hit or anything." No, I had no idea, and it's international, so everybody seems to know the Care Bears, and if it's not people saying, I used to watch you as a child. They're saying, my children used to watch you as a child. There's endless generations of people watching. And then that stuff led to other cartoons. And I have a great cartoon demo tape with so many cartoons because the Americans started to come up to Toronto and do their cartoons, producing them here with the voices, cheaper talent and stuff. And I did a lot of great stuff. And I think my favorite one, because it was written so well, so funny, was, I think, Alf Tales.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some great clips in there. I played these snorky, with the elf, with the big long nose and stuff. I played so many different characters, and it was so exciting and so well written, and I got to do this voice and this voice. on those boys, I mean, I got to do so many different places. They were all different characters. They were all produced by Michael Hack,
Yeah.
directed by Michael Hack, who's still in L.A. And that was my favorite one. But I also got to be a starship commander on Starcom. That was exciting, and that was in L.A. And Rupert the Bear is a big hit here, and I got to be a guest star on that playing Phoebe. But years later, I got a call to audition for a part in Forget About It, which was a modern cartoon. Forget About It.
Yeah.
And it was like on, even though it was a voice cartoon, it was an on-camera audition, and I looked, and I see in the room in L.A., because it's from L.A., one of my comic buddies, Pat Bullard.
Oh, yeah, Pat Bullard.
Pat? And he says, yeah. Maybe interviewed him. I said, yeah, Pat, Marla, Pat. He goes, yeah, I know, I asked for you. I said, that's how I got this. He says, so you get the part, so this is how you read it. You know, just read it, and we'll see what goes. And so I read it. And the next thing I know, they said, you got the part of the robot. And then I said, so how many episodes is the robot in? He said, no, they kill her off in the end. I said, okay, great. But I am still getting residuals for Forget About It. Forget About It.
Forget about it.
That was great.
I don't remember that one.
That's the newer one. I don't know where it is, but I'm still getting residuals, so I guess it's playing somewhere.
Yeah. You did Starcom. I've talked to Susan Roman, who worked on that show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She may have replaced me. She replaced me several times and things, yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, there's a picture on the internet that I have. I can send it to you if you want to see it. It's pretty damn funny. Darkheart and Christy having wild sex. I found it, and I fell on the floor laughing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sure, send it. Sure, I'll take anything.
Okay. You'll be impressed by how great they drew Christy's clitoris.
Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I remember the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Yeah, and I get to report too. I can't remember my voices, so I can't remember what I did. I remember when I did Bogus, and that was a movie starring Whoopi Goldberg. That's the reason why I remember so much, and I still get residuals for that. Is because the director of the movie was Norman Jewison. And I heard that it was, and I walked in to do some looping for Bogus. And I'm in this, studio with a big screen, and there is Norman Jewison, and he says, I'm going to direct you. I said, okay. And just want to tell you, I've admired you all my life, and I love your movies, especially Meet of the Night, and this and the other. Just thank you. Anyways, I want you to do this and this and this with that role. It was almost hard to concentrate with him standing beside me.
Yeah.
But, I've admired him all my life. Didn't expect to meet him to do this looping, because I've done tons of looping. I've done, women having orgasms and chihuahuas who have one leg that's hurt. And chimps and ghosts coming out of radios, looping and stuff like that. But to have this big director standing beside me was very exciting.
So, I think you're so amazing and brave for what you've been through with breast cancer. When did that first start, and how long did it take before you were recovered from it?
Started in 1998, last day in June. I had been examined by a doctor 3 months before, had a mammogram 3 months before. They didn't find anything, but after that Jim Carrey reconciliation at that party, I just felt so relieved and wonderful, and I was doing my laundry at home, and I felt this lump higher up than my breast, almost. And I thought, maybe it's a lymph node, because I had mononucleosis a couple years ago. So I called this great GP that I had found. Boy, was I lucky. Really great internist, who never said, it'll go away, call me if there's anything wrong. No. He said, let's examine it. And he said, well, it's not a lymph node. Go get a mammogram. And I said, well, I just had one. He said, I don't care. Get another one. I'm sending a requisition over. Just get another one. So I did. And they said, there's something suspicious. We need an ultrasound right away. So they got me an ultrasound right away. That was another amazing thing. And then they said, no, there's something definitely wrong here. We need to call surgeons. And they took care of everything. And they called the GP that I had there. And by the time I came home, he called me with an appointment with a surgeon. And I said, all I asked for is, he said he's very talented. I said, but is he nice? I know it's crazy, but I come from Canada. Nobody's that nice here. You know, we're supposed to be grateful that they get free medical care, but they're not that nice. I want somebody nice, because this sounds serious. He says he's one of the nicest surgeons I know, and he's one of the best.
Yeah.
Got an appointment, and he said, I agree with them. There's something suspicious. Now we can monitor it. We can scan you every 3 months, or I can cut it out. I said, cut it out. And he said, and I do the surgery under a local anesthetic. I said, perfect. He said, most people are afraid. I said, no, I like to be up for the party. I want to hear what everybody's saying about me behind my back, you know. So I was up for the whole thing, and it turned out to be definitely malignant. And I'm what I like to call myself the less than 3% kid, because often anything that's happened to me medically, it's always in the textbook says less than 3% of the cases would do this, that, or the other, and it's always me. So the tumor was very small, but fast-growing, highly rated, and it had spread. They did a second operation cutting out the lymph nodes on my right side, and so they found one positive lymph node, which qualified me for chemotherapy, and it was a very strong chemotherapy because it was fast proliferation rate of the cells. So I went through that, and they said, do you know of a oncologist? I said, no, I'm not that well known in town, but I know every specialist. But I happened to be taking care of my neighbor who was dying of cancer, and I asked her, what is his name? And I just called his office, and he ended up being a lovely, incredible doctor. Incredible. So was the surgeon.
Oh.
He took such good care of me, Tommy. It's not like anything that anyone's ever experienced here, I would say. I mean, these people called me directly at home. They told me I could call them on the weekend if I was feeling sick. I would always get their calls, and they would always answer my calls. And they always said, ask questions. There's only one mistake, and it's not being heard and being given the wrong answer. But there's never a wrong question. I never get spoken to here like that. I get told, why do you ask so many questions? I'm the doctor. I went to school. You didn't. That's doctors that I keep bumping into, unfortunately. But there, I have to say, they saved my life. Because they said, do I really have to go through this? And I said, if you don't, the statistics show with what you've got and how fast it's growing in 5 years, you might be dead. So, yes. Because you're strong and healthy right now. And I was 42. You're strong and healthy right now. I'm not that young and not that healthy. I said, yeah, you are, actually. Because you're going to go through a bit of a rough time. And so I got through it. But I got to say, it was tough. Because that chemo was a tough one. But I got through it. And so when you asked me, when did I feel like myself, it was a couple of years. Because it really took such a toll on me, especially my memory. It really affected my memory. And between that and going through the earthquake, which I guess I experienced some sort of shock being in a building that fell down and surviving, any kind of thing, traumatic thing that happens like that has affected my memory. So I couldn't remember my act. And when I would get together with people while I was recuperating, they'd say something funny, and I'd say, that's funny, whose is it? Because, comic girls say, whose is it? And they said, it's yours. I said, really? I don't remember. I said, that's okay. It's still yours. I said, oh, my God, I'm funny. I was funny. So it was a rough road, but I feel like I'm myself now.
That is wonderful. I just cannot begin to fathom just how hellish it can be to get chemotherapy. I mean, it's just got to be that's got to be death in and of itself.
It feels like that, actually, but because I'm around it a lot now. I have friends who go through it, and relatives go through it, and what I experienced and seen for myself is there's many different types of chemotherapy. There's many different levels and strengths. I know some people who are on it who don't lose their hair. I know some people who just take it in pill form. I know some people who actually can go to work. I was sick as a dog. I couldn't do any of those things. But a lot of people are going through different types of chemo, and they're still getting through it in an easier way. But it's certainly not a good feeling.
Of course not.
There's stronger ones and weaker ones, and I certainly encourage anybody who's being told that they should take it to take it if you want to lengthen your life. There's never a guarantee, but if that's what they're saying, then give it a try, unless you know you want an earlier exit in life.
Yeah, cancer runs on my dad's side of the family. Fortunately, he doesn't have it, and neither does my two last uncles do, although one of my uncles had a stroke the other day. So hopefully...
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, hopefully none of them will get cancer. Hopefully the curse of cancer has been dissolved in the family. Hopefully. So we get to the fun part. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what is it? Oh, I was just going to say it's always good if you can get it. It costs money to get a genetic testing on whatever cancer you're concerned with and seeing if something shows up. Not that it means that you will get it even if it does show up that you have the gene, but it's just an indicator.
Absolutely. So now we get to the fun part of the show with my secret silly game, and this is a series of silly slumber party questions. Going to indulge our freaky comic sides here, and how this works is I ask you the question, you answer it, and then you ask me the exact same question, and I answer it, and you can comment on answers.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm understanding. So you ask me a question, and I ask you the same question?
After you give me your answer, yes.
And then I ask you the question, okay.
Okay. Marla, are you ticklish?
Yes. Tommy, are you ticklish?
Yes, very ticklish. I've been known to hit people in the groin.
Oh, because they're so ticklish, okay.
Yeah. Is your belly button an innie or an outie?
It's an innie. How about yours, Tommy?
It's also an innie.
Right.
What color are your toenails painted?
Mine are not painted. How about yours?
Same here. Same here. Usually when I do, I like to go elaborate colors.
Good.
What would you say is your best personality trait?
That I'm a good listener.
You are a good listener, I have to say.
Well, thank you. And what is your best personality trait?
I have this wonderful balance between having empathy, but also having no filter at the same time.
Oh, that no filter will get you into trouble.
I know, but I'm prepared for it every time. What's your favorite place, either in the past or in the present, to have a quickie in?
Sexually quickie?
Yeah.
I like well-ventilated, air-conditioned, clean-sheeted bedrooms.
Okay.
And what is yours?
Back in the day, I used to love to do it in the back of a movie theater. That was a lot of fun. You can't get away with it nowadays, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I've done it in lots of weird places. A nature park once, And then
Things like that can get, there's dirt, there's bugs, I've done it in toilets or, washrooms, but it's a little cramped.
Oh, yeah.
So, at this age, I really appreciate a nice, clean bed with air conditioning.
A lot of Canadians I've talked to like to do it in nature.
Not me.
Really?
Not me. No, not into bugs. No, not. Don't like the outside that much.
Yeah, there's a real risk for Lyme disease. Although I will tell you, I do have this fantasy of eating a girl out on a log in nature. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if that'll ever happen, though, because of COVID and Lyme disease and all of that. But a deer did walk by us when we were in that nature park. And I hope that deer is still alive, and we hope we didn't kill it.
I hope they don't talk.
Yeah. And then my favorite question, is there a stinky smell that just makes you gag?
Worms. Earthworms.
Do they have a scent?
Oh boy, do they ever. Just go out when it's raining. I mean, I can't go out in the rain because I start to gag the next day. What is your most horrific smell that makes you gag?
Either farts or dirty feet.
Okay. Yeah, that's not pleasant. They're not pleasant, but with farts, you've got to use a pack of matches. And with the smelly feet, just get a washcloth with some soap.
They're the classics.
Yeah.
What's your favorite joke of all time, by the way? Like, it could be your favorite, it could be yours, it could be somebody else's. Like, is there just one joke that just kills you every time you think about it or you hear it?
Well, I love mine. I love all of mine. One of the ones, really, and they keep popping up because I had such a vast amount of material over the years. And, I'll still say to my girlfriend some joke. She goes, "That's really funny. Who did that?" I said, "That's mine too." She goes, "Oh my God, that's so funny." I said, "I know." But the one that I like to repeat a lot, because when we're microwaving food, is I always say, this always reminds me of Joan Rivers' joke, and she's doing an impression of Elizabeth Taylor later in life because she gained so much weight. Elizabeth Taylor stands in front of a microwave and says, "Hurry!" And, the dinner is cooked in 2 minutes, but because she wants to eat so soon, so much, so often that it's not fast enough. So I like that joke a lot.
That is a pretty good joke, yeah. Mine is, how do you make your wife scream twice? You fuck her up the ass and then you wipe your dick on the curtain.
Oh my God! Are you putting that on your podcast?
Oh, I've told it many times. In fact, the first time I heard it, a female comic told me it on the podcast.
Oh, wow. Tell it to me again.
How do you make your wife scream twice? You fuck her in the ass, and then you wipe your dick on the curtain.
That's really funny. It actually is. It's really funny.
Yeah. I love telling dirty jokes. I really do. If you go to dinner with me, you're most likely to hear several of them.
Did you do a lot of dirty jokes in your act when you were on stage?
Oh, yeah. And San Francisco was not the place to do it. It took me a long time to realize that, but I just didn't care at the time. I was just being me, I mean, everybody was dirty, but just they were doing it from an artistic standpoint of knowing your audience and doing it in these long form alternative bits. And I wasn't a long form guy. I was just a one-liner guy. All the older comics that have been around since you started, they all loved me because I was like a lot of the guys that they came up with.
Right.
It's just the San Francisco comedy scene is just weird, and it's not even a scene. It's just stupidity is what it is. And it just remember when you were coming up, it was all Jewish guys from New York who were neurotic, and they were talking about their mother on stage and whining. It's not like that anymore. It's all bitter alpha male former athletes just going up there, being crude, and then just, having a fraternity with the other male comics off stage, and they talk badly about other comics, and they say horrible rapey things about the women comics. It's an environment I don't like, and it's just truly offensive, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's truly offensive, but hopefully, there'll be a turnaround in the future, and hopefully there'll be a restriction of open mics and all of that and stuff. But I don't see.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
I don't see any signs of that happening. Well, Marla, I thank you so much for coming on today. You are such a brave, sweet lady, and you're so much fun. And I subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Great. Well, I like to keep contributing to that. I've got more things to put on there.
Yes, you are just drop dead hilarious. And I tell all my listeners to take a listen to it. And so are you doing any comedy up there? Do you have any gigs?
Well, it's COVID time and everything's closed. So I don't do anything. I just make funny things from my home and post them. So I try to do that every week. And I'm going to take my time going into the public now with the microphones and everything. I'm just going to keep my distance for now.
Right.
Because I'm not sure it's all that safe. So I'm double-vaxxed, and I'm waiting for things to get a little better.
Well, you will make a monster comeback. I know it. And
thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this interview. You were delightful, too.
Oh, thank you. Yes, have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you. You too, Tommy.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Marla Lukofsky. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh, she is so damn funny and so free-spirited. I enjoyed talking to her. And check out her YouTube channel, Marla Lukofsky. She is hilarious. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.